My family keeps asking me to stay the good child and help solve problems, but after going through a lot of tough times, I can't do it anymore. First off, no worries. It's great that you're reaching out for support. So here's what's been going on. My mom has 2 kids, me, 24F, and my younger sister, 15F. When my mom got pregnant with my sister, she married my stepdad, who's much older and was pretty wealthy at the time. They moved us 4 hours away from my grandparents and my dad, who had been my main caregivers since I was born. Life at home wasn't easy for me. I've been diagnosed with CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and severe anxiety because of what I went through there. My sister didn't have it easy either. She's been really spoiled, like extremely spoiled. I've tried telling my mom and stepdad that she wouldn't just grow out of it, but they didn't listen. She behaves really badly, screaming, throwing things, hitting people, and even threatening to lie to CPS, Child Protective Services. She says terrible things to our mom and dad and even to our grandparents. She's totally out of control. Well, here's the thing. They don't really do much about it. Their idea of discipline is basically nothing. My stepdad, being considerably older, doesn't want to upset my sister because he doesn't have much time left with her. So he leaves all the discipline stuff to our mom, who's not in the best mental state, and gives in easily. Since my sister's behavior is so challenging, I've always been seen as the good kid. But let me make it clear. Being the good child meant I had to keep quiet and just do what I was told. I had to act responsible and mature because my mom and stepdad weren't. Because of this, they've always relied on me too much. I'm the one who sets the table, tries to sort out arguments, and even attempts to parent my sister, but they always undermine me. This messed up my relationships as I grew up. After high school, I left home and went to college. I started therapy and realized that my constant need to please others, which I learned from living with them, was holding me back. So I've been slowly working on changing that. The last important thing to mention is that my mom and stepdad haven't really supported me financially. Even when I lived with them during high school, my grandparents were the ones paying for everything. My lunch money, new clothes, even my car when I turned 18 was a gift from them. They only paid for 1 semester of my college, which was about $2,500. They did cover the cost of my braces when I was 10, but that's pretty much it. Meanwhile, they've been spending a ton of money on my sister, $10,000 per semester for her private school tuition, an $11,000 monthly allowance on her debit card, and even buying her a brand new Porsche even though she can't even drive yet. Last year, my mom even asked me to give up celebrating my own birthday so I could go to my sister's cheer nationals in Florida, which I did to be a good sister. But back when I was in high school, there wasn't anything like that for me. I get that most of this money comes from my wealthy stepdad. I know I'm not his biological child, so I don't expect him to support me the same way. But now they're expecting me to support them, which doesn't seem fair considering how they treated me. I'm really stuck in a tough spot. Every Christmas Eve, I go to my mom's house to wake up and open gifts on Christmas morning because it's important to her. But honestly, I feel like I'm only there to play peacemaker. My sister always makes a scene on Christmas Eve. Last year, our mom spent $44,000 on gifts for both of us, but my sister wasn't happy with anything she got. She threw gifts in the trash, screamed, bit, and scratched. She was 14 years old acting like this. Christmas Day always ends in fights and tears. I dread Christmas because of this. This year, I wanted to spend the holiday with my grandparents and see my dad. But when I brought it up, it didn't go over well. My grandma told me I'm the only thing keeping my mom sane. She kind of hinted that a good kid would want to be with their family and sister on Christmas. I told her that my sister gets so much more than me: money, opportunities, support, you name it. And she treats our mom horribly, yet she gets rewarded. Why should I keep being the good kid if I'm not getting anything in return? Why should I spend a holiday with a family that makes it miserable over my grandparents who actually support me? My grandma didn't like what I said. She begged me not to tell my mom and to just put up with it. This isn't how my grandparents taught me to be, but it's not just about the money, it's about how they're using me. Part of me feels bad for being upset about how differently my family treats me compared to my sister. But it just doesn't feel right to keep giving in to them. I feel torn because my grandparents have always been supportive, but sometimes I wonder if they forget about what I've been through because my mom is struggling with her mental health and my sister behaves badly because that's all she's ever known. I can't shake the feeling that my boundaries are being ignored, so am I wrong for wanting to talk to my mom about this? If I am, what else can I do? Thanks for listening. Comments where OP has replied. Intrepid_potential_60. Are you saying you want money to visit your mom for Christmas? That doesn't seem like a good idea. It's not right to ask for payment just to spend time with family. Maybe it's better to just not go. It's understandable not to want to go, but asking for money is not a good move. I'm not asking for money. I want them to stop relying on me for everything: financial support, emotional support, you name it, when they haven't supported me since I moved in with them at 10 years old. Everyone acts like I turned out fine despite what I went through and that my sister can't help her behavior, but it's not fair. My sister, my grandparents, my parents, they all suffer, but instead of facing it, they'd rather pretend everything's fine for Christmas. I'm ready to confront them about all of this, but then comes the hard truth. I can't keep being the good child if it only brings me misery. Which grandma is this anyway? Why doesn't she support me being independent from my mom, especially after all the trauma? They won't be around forever, so why don't they want me to spend time with them, who actually love me, instead of with my spoiled sister? These are my maternal grandparents. Although my grandpa isn't my biological grandpa and isn't related to my mom either, her biological dad disowned her before he died. My mom has always felt jealous of my grandparents, especially my grandma. When she's drunk or high, she's told me things like, "I'm sorry I wasn't the mom you needed," or "I'm your real mom, not hers." My grandma, I think, feels guilty for my mom's struggles because she's mentally ill and used to have addiction problems. We all feel sorry for my mom and the tough situation she's in, stuck in a marriage she probably wouldn't choose now. But for some reason, I end up carrying most of the emotional burden. My grandma tries to help, but my mom wants me around because it eases her guilt. I think these comments are pointing to another part of the problem. Your grandparents are expecting you to support your mom, their daughter. Maybe it's worth explaining that you need a break or you're going to reach your breaking point, and you don't want to make things worse in an already tense situation. You could tell your grandparents that you just need some time apart until your mom's family situation settles down, which might never happen, but it gives you some space. And if they keep insisting, suggest that they go support your mom while you spend Christmas with your dad. If they're so keen on helping her, they should be willing to deal with your sister too, which might help them understand what they're asking of you. Ah, I see. Your grandparents have done a lot for you, even though you're not their own child. You feel a deep sense of gratitude towards them, and you're always ready to help them out whenever they ask. So at the core of this situation, if you're not there, the drama and emotional strain fall on your grandmother. She's older and not in the best health, and you can't bear the thought of leaving her to deal with everything on her own without a plan. Update 1, January 30th, 2024. I took a lot of the advice from my original post. I just wanted to update everyone here and maybe get some more advice. Surprisingly, Christmas turned out better than expected, but not for the reasons you might think. I ended up not confronting my mom about everything. Instead, I stayed with my grandparents as long as I could, then drove 3 hours to my mom and stepdad's place. My stepdad's family has always been kind to me, treating me like one of their own, so I enjoyed spending time with them. My mom and stepdad left the gathering early on Christmas Eve. It turned out my sister had opened all her gifts earlier in the day. When she realized she didn't get everything she wanted, she took a couple of my presents and threw them in the pool. Thankfully, I had asked for a lot of cat toys for my cats, and those were the things she threw in. They were fine after they dried out. I stayed the night with my mom and stepdad, while my sister went to stay with her aunt and cousins. I opened my presents peacefully on Christmas morning before heading to see my dad. Overall, it was a nice holiday compared to the ones we've had in the past. But what comes next isn't any better. It seems like my sister's behavior is getting worse. Last year, she messaged me with a picture of her with a fat lip, saying our mom hurt her. I was furious and called her aunt to pick her up, telling them she couldn't come back and threatening to call the cops if they didn't agree. When I talked to my mom, she had a severe black eye from where my sister had attacked her. I didn't care who started it. I just thought it should never have gotten to that point. My sister spent the summer with her aunt, and CPS investigated but found no abuse in the home. Both my mom and sister went to therapy, and my sister wanted to go back to our parents before school started. Now things are getting worse. My sister has learned that she can hurt our mom and get away with it. I've received 3 phone calls where I've seen my mom with black eyes, scratches, or marks from my sister. I've seen my sister snatch a wig off my mom's head and rip her hair out. My mom's confidence is low because her husband insults her every day, and my sister destroys anything that could make her feel better about herself. I've even seen her throw glass mugs at my mom. The last time my mom called, she had another black eye. She said my stepdad tried to discipline my sister, but she just shrugged it off. He also took her phone away, but only for 2 hours. My stepdad doesn't stand up for my mom, and she has no power or money to enforce rules with my sister. My sister says they can't do anything to her, or she'll call CPS on them. When my mom called me, I didn't know what to say. I suggested things like sending my sister to boot camp or a mission trip, or taking away her phone, but it's all stuff I've said before. I've thought about getting the law involved, but how seriously do they take child-to-parent abuse? What if I did that? Any advice would be appreciated. Thanks for listening to me vent. Edit. Going no contact is almost impossible. I owe everything to my grandparents, and if I cut off my mom and dad, my grandmother would be harassed to get to me. But I am taking steps to limit contact with them. Edit 2. I just found out that my sister's aunt, my stepdad's sister, knows about the abuse from my mom. She wants to hold a family meeting and intervention, including me and our parents. I won't be part of the disciplining process, but I'll definitely share my thoughts on everything. It turns out my aunt is the one paying for my sister's expensive school, and now she's threatening to pull her out if she doesn't agree to attend a 6-week anger management outpatient program. My sister is really snobby and has said she'd rather die than go to public school. She also loves her cheerleading team. I'll keep you updated. Comments where OP has replied. Siri_and_ta. You should convince your mom to install hidden nanny cams in her house, so the next time your half-sister hurts her, it's caught on camera. That way, if your sister threatens CPS again, your mom will have evidence. In case she does call CPS, your mom could also take the footage to the police and press charges. Maybe if your sister faces consequences like juvenile detention or jail, she'll learn she can't get away with everything. I've been telling my mom to record her at least, maybe with voice memos, but my sister gets her so worked up, she forgets to do it in the moment. I have a couple of recordings, but they're just of her being really bratty and rude, nothing legally incriminating. Sadly, a secret camera might be the solution if I can convince my mom to put one up. Psych Brick 3. It sounds like your mom is desperate for your help, maybe even a way out, even if it's just a roof and 4 walls. I've tried to help as much as I can within my means, but she doesn't want the advice or solutions I give her. She doesn't want to talk about the problem with anyone or take drastic action, which I know is also a sign of abuse. But there isn't anything else I can do. I've called CPS before, and they found no abuse. If I called the cops, they'd all pretend like everything was fine. It's a really tough situation, fine penguin in a jacket. The only solutions I see are either your mom and stepdad getting divorced to cut ties with your awful stepsister, or sending her to a camp, but that's unlikely. Your feelings are completely valid. You're exhausted from trying to fix someone else's problems. Unfortunately, it's not your responsibility. Your mom is being abused by a child, and your stepdad just wants your stepsister to like him before he passes away. If you can't step away from the situation, at least protect yourself emotionally and understand that there's really nothing you can do to fix other people's lives. Through therapy, I've started to detach emotionally. I'll always have sympathy and compassion for my family, for anyone, but I've realized there's nothing more I can do. I've accepted that I might have to keep this part of my family at arm's length to truly find peace. These are the final steps to keeping it that way until they change something. The sad part is, my mom has made significant changes. She's quit alcohol, stopped abusing her pills, gone to therapy, and got her bipolar disorder under control, and she's stuck with it. She's much more stable now, but my sister and stepdad still bring out the worst in her, for their own benefit. Avil Linnet, if you're in the States, many states have laws against elder abuse. It sounds like your stepdad might qualify, though I'm not sure about your mom. In Florida, for example, it's considered a felony. But if I got authorities involved, my stepdad and mom would likely play dumb and deny everything. They're too embarrassed to admit what they've done. Unfortunately, now on to the next story. Story 2. I found out my wife cheated on me with a friend of mine, and now her life is a mess, as my kids informed me. I'm a 35-year-old man, and I was married to my ex-wife, also 35, for 10 years. We got married right out of high school, despite warnings from others to wait, finish college first, start a career, and then see where we were at. Being young and in love, I didn't care what anyone said. We'd been dating since sophomore year of high school, and I thought I'd found my forever person. My wife seemed to feel the same way, so we got married and went to the same college. We lived in married student housing, which made things easier even though college kept us busy. I felt like our marriage was strongest during our college years. After graduating, we got our own apartment and jobs in our chosen fields. Things still seemed great. Slowly, we were building our future together. The people who had initially been against our marriage had come around to supporting us. Her family became like my second family, so marrying her meant gaining a lot more relatives. About a year and a half before our 10th anniversary, I noticed something was off with my wife. She seemed distant and didn't want me to touch her. I thought it was because I'd been working a lot lately and was really busy. So I decided to plan a romantic evening to make it up to her. But she didn't come home that night, saying she was staying with a friend. I had no reason not to believe her, so I trusted her explanation. As our 10th anniversary approached, things only got worse. My wife seemed even more indifferent to me and was hardly ever home. It was then that I began to suspect she might be having an affair. So I used one of those Apple AirTags to track her. I felt ashamed about it, but I needed to find out the truth. Instead of going to a friend's house like she said, she was across town in the opposite direction. I drove to where she was and waited for her to come out. When she did, she was with a guy who looked very different from me. Lots of tattoos and piercings, unlike my more conservative appearance. It was a big shock. I quietly recorded them together and then drove home. When she arrived, I didn't say anything. Instead, I showed her the video. At first, she was shocked, but then she started yelling at me for tracking her with the AirTag, saying it was creepy. Her reasoning was hard to understand. I waited until she calmed down and asked her why. She said she needed someone more exciting and less predictable than me. She didn't want a partner who worked hard to provide for us. She wanted something different. I tried to explain that my hard work had given us a good life, a nice house, car, and more. But she just said she wanted more than that. True to her word, she wanted a divorce as quickly as possible. Even though she could have gotten a lot of money and support from me as the breadwinner, she seemed more focused on getting the divorce done quickly. She said she wanted to be with the guy from the video, calling him her true soulmate. If that's what she wanted, then okay. We agreed on things, and I ended up keeping the house, the dog, and more than half of the money in our shared account. I was surprised that she only wanted the car paid off and no alimony. It seemed like she really wanted to move on from me, which is why she agreed to such a clean break. Did it hurt? Yeah, it did, but if that's what she wanted, then that's how it goes. In a way, it was probably better for me too to have a clean break. After our divorce was final, I didn't have any contact with her. I didn't see any reason to keep her in my life. But we still had mutual friends, and I stayed in touch with some of her family members, so I heard about what was happening in her life. The guy she left me for, who she called her soulmate, broke up with her within a year. It was tough for her because she had been staying with him, and she had nowhere else to go. She couldn't go back to her parents because they had pretty much disowned her, but they still talk to me to this day. The last I heard, my ex-wife was living in a small apartment with her sister and her new boyfriend. She's working 2 jobs to make ends meet and is in debt. If she had asked for more during our divorce, she would have had more money and alimony to rely on. I wasn't complaining, but if she had been more practical, she would have been better off. To make it even stranger, her new boyfriend has the same name as me. I'm not sure how to feel about that, so I try not to think about it. It seems a bit odd to date someone with the same name as your ex. It's like you wouldn't want to date someone with the same name as a family member, so why would you date someone with the same name as your ex-husband? It just doesn't make sense to me. But there were a lot of things about my ex that I didn't understand and probably never would. Anyway, she's in the past now, so I don't need to worry about her anymore. It's been a few years since my divorce, and while my ex-wife's life has been tough, mine has been pretty great. I got remarried about 3 years ago, and my new wife and I are expecting our first child. It was hard for me to trust another woman after what happened, so it took me a while to start dating again. But my current wife was patient and waited for me. Eventually, I felt ready to move on, and now I'm happily married for the second time. I've even been more successful. My wife and I sold the old house I had with my ex, bought a bigger one, and have savings. We both have good jobs, although my wife plans to take time off once the baby arrives. My ex hasn't reached out to me since our divorce, and I don't think she will, which is fine by me. There's no need for us to talk again. But sometimes I wonder if she regrets what happened and rushing through our divorce to be with her new boyfriend. Maybe she does, but I believe that people get what they deserve in the end.